this is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
What's going on, spectators, and welcome to this, the 102nd episode of Spectales. I am your duly appointed host, Jake. Whatever you say and do can be held against you in a comics court of law. These proceedings today will be overseen by the most honorable bearded judge co-host, Jesus. What's going on, your beardedness?
Well, beard him if you got him, obviously, but a couple things with that. You know, honorable, the way you spelled honorable, I don't know if the beard approves of it. You know, it's the UK version, I would say. The beard does not like to be overshadowed by the huge white wigs that are worn in UK courtrooms. But yes, we are having a court of law, a court of comics law here today, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, whenever possible, I like to use the extra U that the UK spellings always do for color and honor and whatever the other
grandeur.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Exactly.
All right. So this week, listeners, we are dipping back to the old school style of episodes before we were chewing the fat with all the comic creators. Before all the glitz and glamour we're positively dripping with these days, we used to do a lot of interviews and conversations with comic collectors and resellers. Some would call them speculators. And while many might consider speculation a dirty word in the comics world these days, we proudly still use spec in our title. Otherwise, we'd just be the Tales comic book podcast, and that just doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it? So, without further ado, we are very thrilled to introduce this week's guest, a friend of the podcast and a regular live sale partner with Jesus on Instagram. You can easily find him on IG by simply searching his name. He is Mr. Zach Mitchell. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jake. Hey, Jesus. Thank you for having me. I am super pumped. Big fan of you guys. Love it.
We're excited to have you on, Zach. Zach is one of the earliest listeners as well to Spectales. And also I met him on Instagram, just like I met Jake on Instagram. You know, my wife says for being an introvert, I make a lot of friends on Instagram, which is kind of funny. And here I have two that I get to share this episode with. So, Zach, welcome again, man. Zach's Comics, the Zach Stack, and the Zach Attack. Very, very excited and happy to have you on.
Thanks, man. I've been talking to Jesus for, God, it's probably almost 4 years now, back when you were doing B&V's live sales with our boy Black Market Comics. So, yeah, man, it's awesome. I'm so pumped to be on here talking comics and spec and whether spec is good or bad. So I'm pumped about that conversation for sure.
It can be both, right? It doesn't have to be, either or. It can be, necessary evil sometimes. It can be a gray area. It can be.
Exactly.
We'll get into it. Let's not put the chickens in front of the cart.
Yeah, the chickens cannot lay on the eggs until they've been hatched or something along those lines.
That's correct.
But this is very much a crossover anyway, of the two worlds of Jesus. All you listeners out there who really want to get to know Jesus on every angle, this is the podcast side of Jesus where I occupy much of that space with him. But the other side of Jesus is really, the sales side of it, which we don't discuss a ton on here, Jesus. But in general, you're part of. What was the name of the group? The Real Ones? Am I getting that right?
That's correct. Zach mentioned that off air, but we're part of the Real Ones. It's the only real comic book sellers online. I'm just joking.
The only ones.
Don't get your comics anywhere else. No, I'm just joking. It's just a group of friends that sell comic books online. Henry is one of them, like Zach mentioned. Ronald, we call him. I mentioned him. He actually, he's been on this show as a listener submitted Grail Tale, yes. And then also he was the one who kind of pointed me in the direction of that collection that I picked up. I think it was at the beginning of last year or something like that. I don't recall.
Definitely. We love
obviously,
Ronald
Young
Phillips.
Aztec. Don't forget Aztec.
Yeah, and our boy Young Aztec as well. Which, man, I don't even know. This is so funny. I don't even know Young Aztec's real name. Do you know his real name, Zach?
Oh, I feel terrible right now.
Oh, no.
I feel terrible right now. I do.
Don't forget
sure.
Young Aztec, except we all forgot.
Except,
No, I don't know his real name. See, and that guy, Young Aztec, good guy. Also in the chat as well. He was introduced to me through them. Like I didn't know him, but he's in the group chat and he's a good guy. But I don't know his real name. I just don't know. I probably his is the newest friendship that I would say I have is through them. But yeah, I mean, it's just a couple. I think it's like 5 of us. We talk about comics. We talk about sales and what can be hot or what can be what's going down or when to get rid of certain things. And we also go live together. Me, not as much as I used to. Like Zach mentioned, I used to do every Tuesday night a sale with Henry. It was called the B&B Show, and then Zach is now part of that Tuesday night show every Tuesday with Henry, and it's called the B&Z Show now. So yeah, and I get on there every once in a while. They'll allow me to come in every once in a while.
sometimes.
Sometimes I have to send them some stuff. I have to tell them what's going on with the show or what guests we're going to have, and then they allow me in. You didn't hear that, Jake. Don't get upset.
I don't care.
So yeah, that's the group that we have, and we just named the chat the Real Ones just because we feel, I don't know, we're just the real ones of Instagram, I guess.
Yeah, we're all just super chill. We're sharing information. We're talking about what we're buying that week, what we think is going to pop, or what's going up in value, what's not, which covers we think are going to be the good ones coming out, and, trying not to talk too much crap about other sellers. So,
which is hard to do sometimes, right? Like right now, I mean, as we all know, social media is kind of toxic in certain situations. So we definitely try to avoid that as much as we can. And then there was another thing. Also we read a lot. We do read a lot. I think that's something different from a lot of other, sellers out there, which allows us to be a little bit on the forefront of certain books. But we definitely read a lot. These guys have given me a ton of recommendations. I've given them a ton of recommendations. So that's another part of why we feel we're a little bit different, because we actually do read the books that we sell.
Very nice. Well, everybody listening out there, you just got a lot of really good information on some people to go follow, not just for comic book information, but if you're really looking for or looking to get into buying comics through Instagram, there are some very trustworthy people. They have been vetted numerous times. They're good people you can trust to go buy some good comic books. And I highly recommend all of those individuals. So we may circle back around and give that group, those individuals, one more shout out towards the end of the show. But let's. So we kind of got into, Jesus, how you met Zach and how you guys have kind of built a friendship over the last few years. But I do think there's a lot of good conversations we're going to have, but we can't start any of them until we hit this button.
Recent pickups.
That's right, the recent pickups segment, where we're going to discuss a comic book or collectible, or comic books in some cases, that we recently picked up, read, collected, whatever it might be. Jesus, this is traditionally where you go first. I'm going to give you the mic.
All right, I have one right now, and then one that I kind of will talk in the spec segment, which is not a real book, I guess, out there, but it's more of a observation, right? Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is, I don't think I've talked about it on here. I remember talking to you about it, Jake, but did I mention Thief of Thieves before? I think I mentioned it in the real ones too, Zach. Thief of Thieves. So I mentioned that I've been going back and reading some books that hit my periphery, even when I was not reading, when comic books was adjacent to me. I mentioned Chew. That was one of them. I mentioned, what was that? Metal Tech Jacket, I think it was. And this one is another one called Thief of Thieves. It was optioned. That's why it hit my radar. And I was like, oh man, I wonder what this is about. Has a pretty cool first cover, first issue. It was going for about $100 at the time back then. Nothing ever came of it that I know, that I think of, or I haven't seen it, I guess. But I was surprised to see who it was from. And it's actually by Robert Kirkman. So Robert Kirkman, which I've been reading a lot of his stuff lately for one wrong reason or another. This is the second reason. One is because I kind of want to see his career and Invincible. I really enjoy Invincible. I think Zach, you mentioned you like Invincible as well.
Love it.
But I read Thief of Thieves, and man, holy crap, was it a really good read. And it's something completely different than what I'm used to. It's what it is. It's a crime, right? So it's under the crime genre of comic books. It's not superhero. It's not horror, which those are usually what I'm usually sticking to. And I came across this and I was like, man, this is fun. I couldn't put it down. I read the first 12 issues in one day because it's so different, and it's basically a Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12, whatever it is, where you have they have to find certain characters that do certain things, and they have to get somebody out of jail, like just different kind of stuff. And the way they do it, when you find the reveal, I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. I could see this as a movie. I could see this as a show where it's what is it called, where you're looking one way and it's another. Like you see it happen one way, and then they reveal how it actually happened.
Like a twist
or different.
Yeah, I mean it's a twist, but it's a no. It's like man, there's a word for it. But basically that's the gist of it. It's just like Ocean's 11, where you think that something's happening, and then they go back and they show you exactly how it happened, which was way different. And that's what this series was. This thief of thieves or whatever. And at the time, I guess when he popped, it was because Walking Dead was hot, and I'm sure they were like they're trying to gobble up everything that was Robert Kirkman. And this is probably one that kind of fell by the wayside and has been production hell. I don't know why it didn't get made, but it's really good. It's really good. It's really different. Again, it's crime. So that to me is not something that I go after. And I don't think there's a lot of that, maybe even well written in comic books per se, that gets to front of mind, or gets to, gets that buzz, or gets that pop for us readers. So I was very happy that I went back and read it. I was excited. It was on, I think it was on Kindle for free, because it's so old, right? It's so old, but it was good. So that's my recent pickup. That's my recent read. I definitely recommend it. I'd like to see what some of our reading listeners think of it, because it is different. It's so different. It's not horror. It's not superheroes. It's crime. So check it out, guys, and let me know what you guys think.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm seeing it here. If you, I mean, I did a very quick Google search, found it on Image's website, and on Image's website, you can actually read it for free. Like I'm looking at you can read issue number 1 for free online. Like all good drugs, the first one is free, but I believe you're going to have to buy the rest of them. However, first issue, free of charge. Just go to, I Googled Thief of Thieves and clicked on the Image website, and it popped up, gave you a little prompt. It did make me say that I was 18 years old or older. It said, "Are you 18?" And I had to say yes. I wonder who clicks the button that says, "No, take me back." Like, who clicks that?
Not my children. Not my 13-year-old and 15-year-old.
There's no child that if you're 13 to, I don't know, I'm assuming anybody old enough to read who gets to that prompt, nobody's saying, "Oh, shit, I better go back." Well, they're probably not saying shit either, but they're not looking at that and going, "Oh, I better go back. I'm not old enough to see this." In fact, they're probably thinking the opposite. Ooh, this might be good stuff.
Let's go.
Yeah, but it's the internet. You can find everything. Anyway, I really like it. That is it. Kirkman, it's one of those things where, I mean, look at everything he touches, he's got the Midas touch. Everything kind of turns to gold. And with Skybound expanding, it seems, I wonder what is going to happen next, right? I wonder what Kirkman project, what Kirkman piece is going to become the next Walking Dead, the next Invincible, something, right? And he's got a lot out there. Was this one of, by the way, Jesus, do you know if this was one of the series? I know Kirkman has done several of these where they made the first trade super cheap, where like the first trade, I like, instead of it being like the first 6 issues, I know a lot of Kirkman books, they put like the first 4 issues into a trade and then they sell it for like $9. So it's cheaper than if you were to buy the first 4 issues individually. But
well, I can tell you that the first trade was 6 issues, so I don't think that's one of them.
Okay. But that is an interesting business model that I've seen with some Kirkman books, where they purposefully make the first trade so cheap, like you can get into it easier. And I think that's fairly smart as well.
Okay. 5 books. Sorry. 5 books for the first one.
Well, how much does it cost?
I don't know. I told you I got it on Kindle, Comixology.
And you got the whole thing for free? Because it's so oh, Comixology just has it with your membership.
Oh, your membership. How many issues is it?
Total?
12? Is that what you said?
Well, the first 2 volumes are 12 issues, but I think
they were up to like 42.
Yeah, it was like 40 something. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It went on for a while. I'm on the second volume. It's still interesting, and it's part of a larger like storyline that I can see going 40 issues. So I'm sure he went all the way to 40 and he finished that larger storyline. But again, I thought it was really interesting, man. I definitely recommend it. I'd love to see what you guys think on it, because I can see why it was optioned, right? Like it's a very good story, very interesting, it is like Ocean's 11, but a little bit different. So maybe that's why it didn't get made either. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why it didn't get made.
Well, it just hasn't been made yet. Maybe it's in development hell, as many things tend to be. All right. Well, nice suggestion, Jesus. Great recent pickup. That is definitely worth a solid 3 tater tots. 3 out of 5 tater tots for Jesus this week. Congratulations.
Here we go.
It's going to be really hard for anybody to beat that. But next up to try is Zach. Zach, what do you have for recent pickups this week?
Well, first, it was interesting you were talking about Kirkham, because for a long time, I've always been a superhero guy. Over 30 years, started reading and collecting when I was, 12 or so. So it was all Spider-Man, all Marvel, maybe a couple of Batmans thrown in there, but mostly just 90s Marvel. And then, you go off to college and take a big break. And then I got back into comics basically with Kirkman and The Walking Dead. And it was the trade paperbacks, and I would just go through those. And then that was something that I could easily read and just love. And it was also more adult, more mature, almost like some horror aspect. And then since listening to you guys, and since I got back into comics hardcore back in 2019, 2020, it's been a lot of horror books, a lot of stuff that Jesus has turned me on to, like Tinian stuff, or, Joe Hill. Last week I picked up the new Creep Show. I don't know if you guys are reading the Creep Show stuff. Yep. This was a Joe Hill Wolverton special only. And basically the whole story is a rich guy who is a collector of horror books, or of horror memorabilia, is trying to get Lon Chaney's wolf head cane from, the original Wolfman movie from back in the day. And so he travels to England, and he's going to, pay millions of dollars for it. But there's a strike with all the drivers, all the taxi drivers. So he has to take a train out to the middle of nowhere to a town called Wolverton. So you can guess, werewolves are all on the train. At first, it seems like he doesn't see the werewolves, and then everybody gets eaten. Just really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. But I'm a huge fan of Joe Hill, from Nosferatu, Lock and Key, of course. Stuff like that. So I'm reading, that was really cool. Joe Hill's Wolverton. It was a single one. So yeah, I'm really into the horror. Deviant, I know that Jesus has been reading that. I'm not caught up completely on Deviant, but I'm liking where that's going. It's almost, is Tinian just writing scripts for movies at this point? It's like, it just seems like every one. My favorite book, the one that really I latched onto, was Nice House on the Lake, that he did. And that brought me back in, and it was different. It's not even close to a superhero book, not even anywhere near. Like, you look around and my whole room is Spider-Man crap, So it's like, reading that was just such a big departure for me. Really like the dialogue. And then Philip Kennedy Johnson, I just read Hulk 8 like this morning, finished that first arc. Hulk, it's so cool. Once more, another horror book, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm hoping that it keeps going. I hope it doesn't fall off like Donny Cates. You know, I want that storyline to keep going because there's obviously a big arc he has with the mother of all evil or whatever it's called. And how awesome was that Ghost Rider from World War II?
Yeah.
So,
man.
He told us that Ghost Rider was going to be badass. Like he gave us that heads up on the.
It was,
and it really was. Yeah, exactly.
He also said that they asked him to come up with like a 12-issue arc, and he gave him 36. So when they asked him to do it, so I think he has a lot of runway left on that. But so Zach, I have a question for you, man.
Yeah.
So before, I guess, like 2020 or what have you, did you read anything else besides superhero stuff, or it was just always superhero stuff?
I mean, a lot of Alan Moore, you know, of course, Watchmen, of course, From Hell, all of the classics. You know, I read all of that. But yeah, it was mostly just, I took a big break. You know, wife number one wasn't into me spending all that money. So took a big break to where it was just every once in a while the trade paperback. You know, I'm not making the trip every Wednesday to my comic shop like I was in college and then after that a little bit. But yeah, it was mostly all superheroes. But not just, I mean, superheroes have evolved. It's not the same as the 1990s Spider-Man is completely different than now. It's much more mature, but we haven't had a good Amazing Spider-Man, and don't get me started on that. But the new Ultimate Spider-Man, solid. I'm very pumped about that. Can't wait for issue 2. So that's why, I mean, we need those books. We need those superhero books to be good, you know, and Batman with, Tinian obviously has come back. You know, it's just without those good, solid superhero books, then I think comics are really going to struggle because they need that. They need to have Spider-Man be good. We need to have a good Batman. We need to have the people that we see on the screen. You have to have good source material constantly coming, in my opinion, for us and also for the next generation, because I keep trying to give my kids books that are coming out now, you know, my 15-year-old and 12-year-old, the ones who are old enough to read that stuff. And it's still a struggle, you know, and if we don't have good quality superhero books, I think it's going to be a tragedy for the comics industry going forward. Well,
we've talked briefly about this, and some of it I think we kind of covered in the last episode with the Kickstarter Roundtable, where we discussed the notion that so many of the best working creators are migrating to the creator-owned space, right? And that's where they are. I mean, look at Tinian. I mean, he's going about doing it in a crazy way. I don't know how he's managing so much content and managing to start a production company, but he's producing the indie comics, right? The Something is Killing the Children, the Nice House on the Lake, which, by the way, still blows my mind that that's a DC. He really could have taken that elsewhere. He could have done that with Image. He could have done it where it's his own, where he owns it all. Maybe he has a good portion of it. I don't know what the details are with him and the Black Label on it, but that's still such an odd. DC did a Black Label for him, and then every other Black Label they've done is basically just like a darker version of one of their superheroes, but they don't have another horror series like Nice House on the Lake. And it really feels like sort of they made Black Label almost exclusively just so they could make Tinian happy. Right? Like he was like, I need to do this series. And they're like, all right, we will create an entire new label just so that you can do it. Just don't drop Batman or whatever. And, but so many people are moving over, and it's funny that you mentioned Joe Hill, because I was today years old when I found out that the Black Phone.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Today years old. Today. I don't know why. It's small world. Like you brought him up. Because I love him as well. Lock and Key. I was a huge fan of the books, not as much the show. I think that they just took it in a direction I wasn't as happy with. But the Black Phone was a short story he wrote and got published in 2004. Like that's how long ago that was. And I believe they've already confirmed a sequel for it. And yeah, Joe Hill, when you look him up, you know who he's related to. Like it's basically a spitting image of his father.
Why he goes by Joe Hill.
Yeah. But anyway, you're right. The best writers, the best creators are moving away from some of our heroes, and that's why I think people aren't as happy with some of the writing. But you get Hickman coming back, and suddenly everybody's like, "Oh, Spider-Man." Right? Like,
Ultimate Universe, new one. Yeah.
Well, there's got to be something. It has to be involved with whatever deal Hickman has with the Ultimate Universe. It's not maybe not a piece, because they're not gonna, any movies they make out of that, Hickman's not gonna get any of that. So obviously, whenever they go to do their own independence, they can own that, obviously, and that's where they're going to make their money. Getting paid by page or by story, if you're an artist or the writer, it's not going to get it done compared to what the possibility is of starting your own production company like Tinian has.
But now they have that leverage.
I get that. I understand that.
Now they have the leverage.
Exactly.
I'm sure to get Hickman to do, I don't know. Maybe Hickman was much more available. I'm not sure. But Hickman's the type of writer where he has enough fans. He could self-publish, right? We had Nick Patera on, who he basically came up with his own idea. And he is such a comic book household name where he just self-published his own book. And it wasn't hard, right? Like he came on and made it sound like it was the easiest thing to do. I was astonished, and it wasn't hard for him. Don't you think Hickman could do the same thing? Don't you think like Marvel's got to be paying enormous amounts to try to get Hickman and and DC with Tinian and all of them to get the big names? They are going to have to start paying more, because those people, those individuals can now just go out and create their own work and own it all. And people are starving for that. People are starving for good writing. And the reason we know people are starved for good writing is they're migrating away from the big two, and they're finding books like Something is Killing the Children, or they're finding books that are the Department of Truth, right? Like there's so much good content out there. So I honestly, I don't even remember what your recent pickup was, but
it was that Creep Show.
Yeah, that's right. For the good conversation, Zach, you get 4 tater tots. Man, hell of a recent pickup.
Boom.
Oh man, I really didn't think anybody was going to beat Jesus this week, but man, that conversation was so good. It sparked good stuff there, Zach. So well done, Jesus.
Thank you.
You know what? Better luck next week, Jesus. I've got a good feeling about next week for you.
That's fair. That's fair.
Not to be outdone though, I still have to go for my recent pickups, and I've got a few. We have not been able to talk about tons of things that I've read, tons of things that I've picked up and still haven't gotten to read. I'm going to start with this one because I haven't talked about it in a while, and it still is one of my favorite ongoing series. It's just really slow going right now. They're not publishing as fast as they should. So this is Animal Castle.
Yes.
I just recently picked this one up, Animal Castle Volume 2. And I wasn't a fan of them going with the Volume 2 title. I know there was a big gap between publishing, but the story continues. It's really the same arc, right? And the thing is like they just had this huge cliffhanger at the end of Volume 1, and then they picked it back up for Volume 2. And really, Volume 2 gives the impression like it's a new arc. And I really think that it disrupted the reading. Unfortunately, that's one of my big gripes about the series. However, it still is one of the most brutally good series right now on the shelves. Animal Castle, it's being published. So it was... it says that it received the Best Limited Series, Best Painter Multimedia Artist for Felix Delep, the creator. So it's...
Okay, so this Animal Castle, I don't know anything about this book at all. Is it another anthropomorphized,
Yes, yeah. So it's
like
basically...
Stray Dogs.
Yeah, are you familiar with Animal Farm? The
George Orwell.
Yeah. So this is basically a new take on it. Now, I believe all of the creators involved are French, and this is being translated to come over to the US, but you would not be able to tell. I'm trying to find There's
is that maybe?
What's that?
Is that maybe why it's taking so long to get over here, because they're having to translate it too?
See, and I have not heard that, but it's completely possible. The thing is so the first book, Animal Castle #1, in volume 1, that first book starts with the brutal murder of a chicken, like dogs ripping apart a chicken, blood going everywhere, and like from the onset, you're smack dab in the middle of this bloody mess between the hierarchy and the peasants that are living in this castle, and they're all animals. And the bull is the king, so to speak, and the animals have an arrangement. And I don't think this is spoiling anything, but like the people and the animals in charge are the bull and some dogs, and basically all the big tough animals are the ones in charge, and the ones that are subordinate are the ducks and the cats and the chickens and all of the animals that cannot fight for themselves, basically. And they do all the labor around this castle, and the animals have an arrangement, or I should say the bull and the dogs have an arrangement with humans. Humans are present in this world, but they have an arrangement basically that they will give them goods and like basically free goods. So like milk, and I'm not sure, I can't remember now all of the goods that basically they just use all of the animals, the subordinates, to get things, and then they give the humans all of that so that they leave them alone, and they get like free booze out of it. And like, it's a really good story. Lot of good metaphors going on in it. I highly recommend it. It's also, like I said, very graphic, very violent in a good way, as far as I'm concerned. But so I haven't brought it up in a while. It was like 2 years ago when the first 5 issues came out, and now they are slowly dribbling 1 through 3 have come out over the last few months. And like I said, it's been slow, but it is still very good.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I mean, that's a good one. I think I have it, since you told me. I haven't read it, but I want to ask, because when you mentioned it, I thought it was something else, and so that's why. Like, is it being the one that I'm mixing it up with is Animal Pound? So have you seen that one?
Mm-mm.
I have not.
Okay, Animal Pound. I think I did it on a recent pickup as well, and it's about this pound, and it's a metaphor as well. It's not based on anything.
You did talk about that once on recent pickups.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed it, and I've been picking it up because it's just different. Like it's they're animals in a pound, and the cats are the ones that I guess figure out what they need to do first, but they have to convince the dogs, who's their mortal enemies, to work together to be able to get out of the pound. And then they hatch this plan, and they figure it out, and they do it, and they execute it. It's really good. Either way, I thought it was that one what you were talking about, and so and I mean, think Animal Pound, Animal Castle, they're really close. They're anthropomorphic as well, whatever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is that a misstep on whose part? I would say it has to be on the Animal Pound.
Whichever one came second, I guess. But in Animal Castle's, or excuse me, in Animal Pound's defense, Animal Castle is not publishing consistent enough. So therefore, you could say that they're it's open and available to swoop in and steal that thunder, right?
Yeah.
But
it's a French book, so you've got 2 separate continents. You got how many? Are they both published by the same publisher? Probably not, obviously.
No. Animal Castle is being published by Ablaze, but I mean, it's a small publisher, but the quality of the paper, quality of the book, and the printing, everything is top notch. I will say that Ablaze is doing a great job, and I know they sold a lot of the first go around. It was kind of a hot book for a little while, because the covers were really good. The first few were spot on, gorgeous covers.
I was going to say, because with books like that, that's almost something that you're going to have to order, before FOC from your shop, from your LCS. if I go to my LCS, that books like that aren't going to be on the shelves.
Surprisingly, that's how I found mine. The cover caught my eye on the shelf. I did not order at FOC, but you're right. The thing is that was 2.5 years ago. It was a while ago, and it was at a time where my LCS was still buying a lot of various books. And in this case, I don't know if they would be anymore, right? Like that might be a book that gets lost in the ether a little bit. So
for sure,
I still recommend it. It's still one of my favorites. When the first arc or when the first volume, whatever you want to call it, it was absolutely one of my favorites. I had it up top tier of 2022, or like I said, whenever that, I believe it was 2022 when that first volume came out. And I would have said that was a top 3 book that I read that year. And I'd still stand behind that. It's so good. So that's first half of recent pickups. I've got one more that I gotta mention. Haven't had much chance to talk about it, but this is book 2. This just dropped last week. This is Boris Karloff, Gold Key Mysteries. This is the second book, and there are some interesting changes to this that I wanted to bring up on the show. Jesus, I don't know if you recall when book number 1 came out and we talked about it. I think I talked about it on the show, but something that my LCS was not happy with. When I bought the book, I was like, "Oh man, we had these guys on the show. I'm really excited. I was excited to buy the book and support it." And all I remember is my LCS owner looked at me and he said, because he knows about the show and he knows that we had him on. And he was like, "Can you do me a favor? Can you tell them they need to put the price on the front cover of the book? Because it's very hard when they don't put that on there. And if you go back and look at issue number 1, it didn't have the price on the front cover, but guess what's on the cover of number 2? And I'm assuming that the LCSs all gave a little bit of feedback. I think a little bit of feedback made its way to Gold Key, and they righted that wrong. It's on there. And once again, Gold Key really, really did it again with this book. So many good stories. This is Jesus and I have been talking about kind of anthologies, horror anthologies, and that there's I feel like they're making a comeback. Maybe it's just me and I'm becoming more aware of them, but I do feel like the horror anthologies and these type of books are making a little bit of a comeback. So this was fun. And the last little anecdote I'll give is it says Boris loves you on the back. And then it's hard to read it here, but it's February 14th, 2024, which happened to be the drop date of the book. So they were right. There's some big brains going on there. They know what they're doing. And they even mentioned on the back page, they advertise Figgy Furthermore and the Kickstarter here. I'm
really upset that I didn't get on that Kickstarter. I mean,
it's still there. It's still there. If you're,
is it still there?
Yeah, it's still open.
Oh, hold on. Which one are you talking about? Is that you talking about Boris or Figgy Furthermore?
No, Boris, the original, the one that you guys talked about over a year ago. And our friend Ron got into it, and just from looking at that, the book looks great. The colors look great. The paper looks nice and thick.
Yeah,
I'm glad that they're doing it right.
High quality. I would agree with that. The Figgy their second one is Figgy Furthermore. Their second Kickstarter is currently live.
Yeah, it's
I'm
already
just writing down so many things right now.
It's already surpassed their minimum goal by a tremendous amount, in my opinion. But that number 2 right there, Jake, is that like I mean, for spec, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's a preview of Figgy Furthermore, right? At least the first appearance of them or something.
That would be the first published appearance.
First preview.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. So just want to drop that real quick.
I just dog-eared all my corners to crease it all up and make sure that value goes way up. All right. Well, it was a tough one, but I managed to get 3.5 tater tots today, and Zach coming up with the rare victory over the almost undefeated Jake here in this particular case. I think I'm like, I don't know how many, we've got 102 episodes and I'm probably like 99 and 2 now, 99 and 3. So congratulations to you, Zach, to be one of the rare winners.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody who got me to this point. Thank you, Joe.
Long time.
Long time. I put in you must work hard at this because I put in the hours. I subscribe to Kobe's work ethic where I wake up every morning at 4:00. I read comics and I go to bed every night. Yeah, I go to bed every night at 2 a.m. Because I'm reading comics all night. So I get a solid 2 hours of sleep in between comic readings. So congrats to you. But the good news for everybody out there listening is the end of the recent pickup segment means we get to move on to the next segment.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
That's right. The Grail Tale segment. And in this case, we're going to ask Zach here to give us a comic book Grail Tale or whatever version of comic book Grail storytelling he would like to bestow upon us. Zach, what do you got going on?
All right, man. So yeah, I've been thinking about this for a little while since Jesus asked me to be on. And I don't really have the traditional Grail Tale to where, I need an AF-15 or I need Amazing Spider-Man 238 first Hobgoblin, which was one of my grails for a while there. So a little bit of backstory. Like I said, I got back into comics basically during the pandemic. A little bit before that, I started reading. And then December 2019, had a heart attack at the age of 42. Crazy, right? So, and then bam, 2 months later, find out wife is pregnant. Here we go. Then the pandemic starts. Wow. So we're locked in. Wife's pregnant. I'm recovering from a heart attack. Both working from home with all these kids running around. I said, hell, you know what? I have boxes and boxes and boxes of comics in my storage. Let's organize this thing. Let's do it. So I get them all out, I see what I have, and I set a goal. It's like, okay, so for Grail Tale purposes, I'm going to get ASM 100 and beyond. Let's go. Because I figured I'm an educator. I'm not making a lot of money, obviously. So the early ASMs, not possible while I'm still paying bills and things like that. So I did pretty well with my ASM 100s and beyond. Obviously missing First Punisher, the death of Gwen Stacy. The expensive ones, the ones that are grails for a lot of people. But what ended up happening was I found Jesus's Instagram show that him and Henry were doing, the B&B Live, and really got into it, really started buying books from them, from using that stimulus money, that stimmy money, spending all sorts of money on eBay. And then all of a sudden, all this extra money that was supposed to be going to the savings or to pay down debt was just being spent on getting ASM 137. Or ASM 198, or Spectacular Spider-Man 3. I was able to get every single Spectacular Spider-Man. That was pretty fun for me, all the way to 263. So nice. I was pumped about that run right there. But, once I got down to it, I was like, okay, I have all these books. They're all organized. We got 6,000 comics here. What are we going to do with them? I need to do something to help my family. So I decided, let's start selling. And our friend Henry, reached out and said, hey, have you ever thought about selling some of your books? So I thought about it, decided, hey, you know what? I'm a teacher. I talk to people all the time. I train adults on how to teach. I can get in front of a camera. I can hear my voice. We can talk about a book, show them that I'm passionate about it. Maybe somebody will buy it. And then so it kind of turned into this thing to where I went on with Henry once, sold some books. And then from there, I just got addicted. And the addiction was more on, if somebody's going to give me $425 for my first appearance of Elektra, sure, I love that so much, but what can I do with that? I mean, there's a lot of people who are listening right now who are like, why would you ever sell these things that you've had for 30 years that mean so much to you? And to me, it was more about like, I don't know, it was providing for my family. It was having fun, being part of this community, which if you're just reading the books, you're going to your LCS, you're not really part of the community. And to me, it was getting on Instagram, really getting involved and, building that following organically, talking to Henry, talking to Jesus, And it just turned into an addiction and something to where I basically ran through all of those spectacular Spider-Mans, all of those Spider-Mans, saved some of them for myself, but really not that much. It was more, my goal was to be a part of something, either you guys do it through podcasting and talking about it. To me, it was meeting all these people who I haven't met any of them in person, maybe we can meet up in the next fan expo, but stuff like that, to where you're part of a community, but also helping out your family, if that makes sense. I mean, a lot of it was just having to provide, and you want to give a grail to somebody else, like that first Electra, that's somebody's grail, that Amazing Spider-Man 300. I've never been a big slab guy, but I sent that off and got it slabbed, and then sold that immediately. That was my first wall book. I remember when I was a kid, going into the LCS and you see that ASM 300 up there. My first book was McFarlane's ASM 319. So then after that, that's when I got obsessed. I had to get every McFarlane. So my first wall book was 300. And then I sell that, and you think of it like, it didn't really feel like I was selling a piece of myself. It was almost like, let's keep this train going, and maybe down the line, I'll have another Grail tale, go back and get that first Punisher, or go back and get that first ASM 300 again. But to me, it's really more about the process, about the relationships. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I feel like it was a trade, basically, what you're doing. You're trading these physical books for community, right? Like that's kind of what you've been doing with it. And yeah, man, Zach, I mean, I remember you at the beginning, and you were almost always on. You had great conversation on there. We would talk about comic books and things of that nature. I also wanted to ask you, how has, like you mentioned, you'll get a Grail down the line, right? The ASM, because I know ASM is your guy too, just like me. But you'll get some. But I feel like, has your likes changed? Like the kind of books that you like, certain ones that you're trying. I don't know. Like I feel like the JSC.
J. Scott Campbell.
Yeah. I feel like I don't remember you liking those at some point. Maybe you always did. I don't know. Like,
well,
did
for sure.
That change?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely gotten more into a lot of the modern variants, and I sell a lot of those as well. Like J. Scott Campbell, JSC. I was big into Gen 13 and, a bunch of that stuff back in the 90s. And then I went away from all that and then came back. And then I see all this thousands and thousands of covers that Campbell's done of, gorgeous women, but just really cool. I mean, their signatures, a lot of them go up in value. A lot of them don't, But to me, it was just about collecting. And it was collecting certain characters like Black Cat, huge fan of hers, Felicia Hardy, so that was who I always, when I popped into your lives, I was like, where are the Black Cat books? Where are the Black Cats? Because any cover with Black Cat on it, I'm buying it. Just like you got your, Green Lantern collectors, you got your Batmans, anybody who, and as far as the modern variants go, I think there's a lot of people, there's a huge following for it, especially with the exclusives, the books that you don't see in the LCS, the books that you have to go through places like, we name drop and help them out or whatever, but like Unknown Comments or 616, things like that, Frankie's, different places that will put out a limited run of 300, 500, 800 of like a cover like that, this Black Cat cover by Nathan Zerdy, a gorgeous Virgin cover, Virgin because it doesn't have the title on it, things like that they print a certain number of them, which gives it value, as we call it. But to me, it was always just the art. It was always just the cover, like, hey, that's hot. I want that in my collection. But now what it is more is I look for what I like with those covers. And then the ones that I like usually are the ones that our regular customers who come on our Tuesday shows also like. So I'm buying what I love. It's also part of, what I love about comics. I'm buying the things that I like. And then that's, people are identifying with that. People are seeing those same things and they're requesting those same things that I keep showing. And it's fun to me. And I think a lot of people talk shit about modern variant collectors. Like you're only allowed to buy the Silver Age. You're only allowed to buy the Golden Age books. You're not allowed to buy a modern book, because it's got a sexy girl on the cover, and I'm like, but then those same people are the ones who are like, buy what you love. You know what I mean? They talk shit about modern variant collectors, and that's the death of the industry now. But then you have all these people who normally wouldn't be buying comics, but they're buying it for the pretty modern variant covers, which is bringing people into it. So I feel like buying what you love should go towards anything. Modern variants like these Black Cats, these David Nakayamas, these Derek Chews, these art germ covers, which some of them can go for hundreds of dollars, weeks after they come out. It's insane depending on if a book pops. Where then, yeah, that value will go back down in most cases. It does. And with the old books, sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. It's the exact same thing. When speculation goes up about Madam Web, ASM 210, I sold my copy that I'd had for over 30 years, the day that it was announced that Dakota Johnson was going to play Madam Web. And I sold it for like $190, just insane on that day. Did I take advantage of the community for selling it for $190? Like, are we not allowed to participate in speculation? You know what I mean? And then profit from it? Is it, I don't know. That's a question. That's a argument that we have a lot in the comic book community about whether speculation is taking advantage of customers who aren't informed that this book is going to go back down eventually, that it's going to come back down to earth. And that kind of bothers me, to be honest. What do y'all think about that?
No, I mean, we can. So I'm trying to debate if we should talk about it now. Or we should talk about it in the speculation segment.
Oh, my bad.
No. You're fine. You're fine.
The lines definitely blur, and I see the conversation of your Grail being the community and your, I guess, involvement or growth within the community, right? Like you utilize the physical books that you had, which the collection itself, let's say that your collection at one time was your Grail, right? Like it was the Grail tale. Yep. It was the story of you getting the collection, and then you utilized that collection to become a part of a community. And that is something that I think is very, well, we talk about it a lot on this show, but the friendships that I've made through comic books, right? We were all, it feels like we all met during the pandemic. We all met during that time period where you couldn't meet people physically in person. And so you went online, and everybody had this, we had this common element of comic books that we were interested in, that we were talking about. And that was what I did. I immediately, I now have access to 3 damn Instagram accounts, because I started on my personal account, but my personal account is like it's private, right? It's pictures of my kids. It's really just for family members, that kind of thing. And so I was going and I was liking Instagram accounts that were comic books, and individuals would try to follow me back. And I was like, no, I don't know you well enough you don't need to see photos of my kids. I'm not posting photos of my comics. So I created a separate account for comics so that I could start engaging with people over comic books. I could share photos of my collection, where that became Omega Red. And then I started making more friends. And then the podcast was just another outlet to speak to people and converse with collectors like we're doing right now. And Zach, I think you would still consider yourself a collector, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I've definitely moved farther to the other side of selling. I've gone through quite a bit of my collection to provide for the family. And also, like you were saying, like my collection as a Grail turned into me being a part of this awesome community with a bunch of people who I talk to regularly, sometimes more than my close friends. Like I've always been an extrovert. I've always been able to, talk to whoever, the jocks and the band nerds at the same time. But during the pandemic, whole different story. We're having to schedule time to talk to your best friend in Minnesota, or your best friend who lives 3 miles down the street, because you're not leaving your house, So this comic book community was something that I could talk about with somebody different than the 4 kids and the wife who love them to death. But after a while, you got to stretch out. But yeah, I really think that that's a good way to put it, is that, you know, my Grail Tale is, you know, building friendships and building a community and, you know, lifelong friends. Like, you know, Henry, I take a bullet for that guy. Never even met him, you know? So it's interesting that these relationships have come from me selling some of these things that I thought, oh, I'm going to pass those on to my kids and they're going to be millionaires growing up. You know, when we all realize that's never going to happen, you know,
unless you have a Superman 1, right? Unless you've got an Action Comics #1, that nobody's going to become a millionaire. But the thing is you were able to transition, and I do think that is a part of transitioning as a comic book collector and a part of the comic book community. And there's, in my opinion, nothing wrong with that. But I think that does sort of transition us. And if that's all right with everybody else, I think that's a great way for us to get into the speculation segment, because I do think there's more of that conversation to be had, and we can go over some speculation books as we dive into that conversation. But first, of course, I have to hit this button.
Speculation.
That is correct. The speculation segment, where we're going to talk about how you can help the hobby pay for itself. Maybe there's some collectibles, maybe there's some comic books that you have, like Zach did, and you can sell it to either help your family, or you could do double down and you could help your family while also making new friends within the comic book community. All totally possible, all something that we talk about within this segment on a weekly basis. In this particular case, I think there's some healthy conversation to be had with regards to, is speculation a dirty word? Right. I think that there's the conversation I had brought up earlier, that I'm in a chat with our friends like Automatic Comics and Newbie Comics, Swaggle Hoss, and a few others. And our chat on Instagram, the title of the chat is The Dirty Flippers. And it's just a joke, right? Like it's, but that's the idea, is that, you know, it is sometimes considered to be dirty. And I that's something we should take on right now. Now, I mean, conversation, you know, flowing through here, but Jesus, do you want to maybe lead with some speculation and we can continue the conversation rolling?
Yeah. So, you know, I have a couple, they're not really like, I'm just going to talk about them because they're what's hot right now because of whatever. And then I'm also going to talk about something real quick that I think should be more of, but we don't even have, it doesn't even exist, but, and it'll tie into something I just recently watched, right? Okay, so one is the hot books right now because of the Super Bowl and the Deadpool trailer are Secret Wars #5 and what is it? All New X-Men #114, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think it is.
Yeah, the first Cassandra Nova.
First Cassandra Nova. So those are the hot books, and we'll get back to those, right? Because those are hot and they're also very controversial, right? The one that real quick that I'm going to talk about is that doesn't exist. Is I just finished watching True Detective, season, what is it, 4 or 5, whatever season it is.
I think it's 5.
The most recent one, right?
Yeah, the most recent one. It just finished on Sunday. My wife enjoys it. Phenomenal. It's not. I mean, I don't know. It's really good. It's equal to at least #1. Not necessarily equal, but it's up there with it for me. Maybe as time goes, it'll get better. But it's return to form, as they say, right? Why isn't there the spec I have is, what comic books are out there like that? Because there's no True Detective comic books, and why isn't there any True Detective comic books? Huge franchise, crime, mixed with, you know, some magic, mixed with supernatural. There just should be something out there of True Detective with that franchise name in the form of a comic book that should be spec'd on, because it's just so good, right? So that's one. Now back to what we're talking about. Secret Wars #5 from 2015 was on the trailer. You had to zoom in; it was an Easter egg, and then Cassandra Nova was teased from behind her headshot, which is on New X-Men #114. These books popped because of the trailer, and by pop I mean the Secret Wars 5 was a $1 bin book, and we've seen it sell as high as $75, right, Zach? $75,
yeah.
$50,
yeah,
$30, $20, and it just created this wave on Instagram FOMO, and FOMO stands for fear of missing out. Fear of missing out, and the conversation around FOMO and who does FOMO, who takes advantage of FOMO, who takes advantage of this, who takes advantage of that. And it was such a interesting conversation because, like Zach mentioned earlier, right? Like in my mind, the market sets the rate. The market sets the price, right? I think somebody was talking, and he's somewhat of a friend of ours. He used to be a buyer of mine. Dan was talking about that. I don't put the $50 mark on it, but I put it for auction. Well, yeah, if you put it for auction, it's still going to sell for $50 because that's what people are buying it for. They're trying to buy it maybe a little bit cheaper, but it's still going to sell $50. Like the market
feels better about it for putting it for auction and not charging $50.
It makes him feel better about it. And you're right though, like it makes him feel better about it. But why does he have to feel better about it? Because it's looked down upon, I guess, for a dealer or a seller to sell these books that are hot, that are going to go down in value in a month or 2 months or what have you, because they got some guy that wanted to buy it. Now, again, it's usually adults buying this stuff. It's rare when it's a child. If they want to buy that book, man, let them buy the book, right? Like I've been, even to this day, I'm guilty of buying a FOMO book, right? Like sometimes I just want the book. I'm willing to spend more to buy that book because I just want it right now, and I want to have it in my hands, whether it's raw or whether it's a 9.8 or whatever. Sometimes I'll buy it. So I definitely think it's one of those things, like Zach said, let people collect how they want to collect. If it turns out that they don't like FOMO in the end, they don't like to be buying these FOMO books and they're paying top price all the time, they'll either learn not to do it around that time, or they'll just stop buying those books and then buy different types of books. But I definitely don't think that I don't think that it's right to talk about. I feel like there's some rules, right? Some unwritten rules, just like baseball, in dirty flipping, right? Yep. That I guess either should be here too, or maybe are looked down upon or frowned on certain stuff of when you sell your books. And I think as long as you abide by those rules, those unwritten rules, then I think you're fine, right? Like for the most part.
Yeah, it's all in how you present it, and how you're selling it. That book, like Secret Wars 5, it pops. If you get on Instagram and show your Secret Wars 5 and you're charging $50 for it, and you're saying, I guarantee you guys, this book is going to play a huge role in Deadpool 3. If you're coming up with your own spin on what you think is going to happen, that is completely false narrative, then I get how people would be pissed about that. You are trying to take advantage of people's excitement, people's FOMO. But when it comes to, like you said, if people want to pay that, they should pay that. I'm like in the middle on that, because I understand that you want to protect people. You want to make sure that they're still going to be a part of this community, that they're not going to spend $50 on this book and get burned and never come back and never buy another book, which never happens usually, but it's difficult because, we're all trying to pay bills here. We're all trying to make a profit by investing in books and thinking that sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. But I think for the most part, these people who are buying books that are FOMO books, they maybe are buying them thinking that down the road that book's going to be double the price and they'll be able to flip it. But I think a lot of people are just buying the FOMO book because they want that book. They want that book that was in Deadpool. They love Deadpool so much, They want to be a part of that. And like, oh man, it's getting so expensive. That value of that book's going up and up and up. I better buy it now. And that's part of it because they want to be a part of that community. They want to have a piece of that Daredevil. They want to have the first book I sold on eBay during the pandemic was Savage She-Hulk #1. And I sold it for over $200. And that book's like a $45 book right now, the first appearance of She-Hulk. It's kind of leveled out back to where it was before all the Disney Plus hype and everything. And so that person who paid that much may be upset about the fact that that book's not worth the same amount, or maybe they were just a huge She-Hulk fan, but to be honest, they're probably upset.
But even then, like, okay, so two things. One, and I'll let you get something in real quick, Jay, because I know you want to say something. But
I got lots to say.
One, what hasn't gone down in value from a collectible standpoint from that time, right? It's not like it's just comic books or just whatever. Like everything has gone down from the peak, right? Then then secondly, as far as them being upset, like what did they expect you to sell it for $45? What it was selling before, right? Like you have to sell it for what the market is at the time, right? Like that's just that doesn't make sense for me. Maybe a discount, right? And maybe you did give it at a discount compared to the peak or whatever it was they sold at, but you're not gonna sell. No one is gonna sell something for $200 for $45 that is selling for $200 like regularly. It just doesn't work that way. Nobody does that. Nobody.
Sorry, Jake, but how do books ever go up in value to begin with? Like, what causes a book to rise in value?
Somebody has to pay it, and it has to be.
Yeah, somebody has to pay it, or there has to be some exciting thing happening that's coming up, or you hear that they're going to use this character in a new way. Now, is it dirty that they're going to use the character in a TV show or a movie, or that they're going to use the character in a way like with Ultimate Spider-Man? That book is like still a $75 book a month after it came out because of the story, because people were yearning for a good Spider-Man story. That's not being made into a TV show. That's not being made into a movie, but that book's still holding its value. That Ultimate Black Panther, it's still holding value around $35 or something like that because people like the story, because people are interested in this new comic universe. But when you add the TV part to it or the movie part to it, it just makes people feel icky, some of them, that it's not fair, that it's like, it shouldn't go up in value just because they're making a TV show about it. Well, why not? Like, how else is a book going to go up in value? Okay, Jake, sorry.
No. Yeah, I appreciate both of your opinions on it. And I do have a few thoughts I want to weigh in. But I think the first thing I want to say is, Jesus, you said FOMO is fear of missing out? Because I was always under the understanding that it was the fulfillment of mutual optimism.
Wow.
No,
wow.
We've been looking at it wrong, Zach. We've been looking at it wrong.
We have been.
No, okay, so here's what I would say to that. And I think that one side of it that I have heard is you get individuals who are run collectors, individuals who are trying to fill out their run or something like that. And that book is, so you mentioned earlier, you were like the ASM, you were 100 and forward, right? ASM 100 and forward. And you said you didn't get ASM 129 or something like that, right? Because
I didn't get the first Gwen Stacy and then the first Punisher one. Those are super expensive books.
Yeah. And you know what? Why is that? Because everybody wants the first Punisher. Everybody wants, and it's justified because it is a popular character and the demand is higher for that character. Therefore, people are willing to pay more for said book. That is popularity. The popularity. That is exactly what's happening with the speculation books. The popularity of these books is the demand is going up. And if a Marvel movie or if there is speculation going on that is causing the book to spike and you are a run collector, if you are a run collector and you are concerned, get the book as early as you can. Or if you are a run collector and you have been in the hobby long enough, you certainly have a history of knowing that book will dip. Now, will it come? I mean, you can't look at it and say, well, the book was it was a $5 book and then Marvel announced this and suddenly it's a $30, $40, $50, $60 book. And maybe you can't expect it to be a $5 book anymore. But if you can get that book down the road for $15, wait it out. Obviously, you're a collector. You've been around the block a few times. I've told people the same thing. Can you wait it out or do you need it now to fill your run? Because if you feel like you need it now, you are contributing to the FOMO that everybody else has, right? Like that is a part of it. You are a part of the FOMO because you may have it for a different reason, but you're still one of the buyers on the market. And I know everybody won't agree with this analogy, but when the price of eggs goes up to like $8 for 12, right? Yeah, sure. Everybody's yelling at the egg companies and saying like, damn you, but you're still buying the eggs. That's the cost of eggs at that time. Will the cost of eggs come back down? Yeah, it always does, or almost always, right? It depends. I mean, there was, the moment where I remember eggs were insane, and that was like 8 months ago. So, I mean, it was like last year, right? And eggs have come back down since then, right? There are tons of those markets. The orange juice or the oranges market or whatever's in trading places. I always seem to think about that when oranges going up and down. But the thing that I like to say is, though, that the market on comic books is a wave, and if you ride it long enough, you will get the prices that you want those books at reasonably, right? You're not going to say that you want Giant Size X-Men 1 for $100. I mean, that's a garage sale, 1 in a million type of find. It does happen, but it's not something that you can depend on. And with recent speculation, and I'll go for recent speculation because I kind of have one of those conversations. There's a recent rumor that is, I found it through Instagram, but it's basically saying it's another rumor regarding Midnight Suns. Now, there were rumors back in 2023 about it, but this is saying that rumored Midnight Suns lineup that will appear in the upcoming film that is reportedly in the works. Michael Giacchino, I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, is set to direct the project. The team will start to form during Marvel Studios Blade. That's when they're going to sort of formally quasi-announce it. And you're going to see Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, Blade, Moon Knight, Elsa Bloodstone, Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, and Black Knight. So
badass. I'm here for
it.
it.
I think it sounds cool, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like it could be really great. Sounds like another opportunity for potentially Mephisto. I don't want to be a Mephisto salesman, but I do think that at some point they'll work that character in. Super popular character. Here's the thing. There's no official word from Marvel on it. My speculation is you can go and find some of these books. You can go and find now those individual characters that I just named. I mean, those books range all the way back from the Silver Age or the Golden Age to now. But if you want what is considered still a fairly affordable book, is the first appearance, the first official, I guess, cameo appearance of the Midnight Suns, but it is on the cover, Rise of the Midnight Suns, Ghost Rider 28. Jesus, we've speculated on this book in the past. We've talked about it for 3 years now. It's still it's still an affordable book. You can go and get this raw under $20 in good condition.
Yep.
And Jesus, you going to pull that out right now? Is that what you're looking for? But it's a totally gettable book. It is.
I have it.
It's a speculation book, and I think it's a great one to continue to look at, especially if those rumors come out. Though that is going to be a book that I think could double in value and contribute to you helping the hobby pay for itself if that's something that you're interested in doing. So that's my speculation, and also my thoughts on speculation being the devil. I don't necessarily think it is. I do think that's a very nice 9.2 copy of it on a hard book to get in a high grade, by the way, with that black cover and just the normal dings you see on books like that.
I sold a bunch of copies of that last year, even when they announced that video game, the Midnight Suns video game. I had friends of mine who aren't comic book hardcore fans, but who are huge gamers, who would send me text messages. They don't even follow me on Instagram. Say, hey, do you have that Ghost Rider 28, that Midnight Suns? I was like, yeah, man, up $15. Here you go. And oh, sweet. And that just goes in a really small collection. Yeah. Then who knows? Like you said, maybe that book's a $45, $50 book whenever they announce the actual thing. Because people aren't going to go out and get the first Ghost Rider. Now, people aren't going to go get first Man-Thing unless they have the cash to do it.
Now, I will say with regards to all of those characters, those are not all of the characters in that version of the Midnight Suns, right? Like that version is Ghost Rider, Morbius, Blade, Hannibal King, Frank Drake, Sam Buchanan, Victoria. Like there's a few. There are a few. It's a worthy book to have, though, just because there are 3 different first appearances in it as well. And one of the other something that was rumored way back in May of 2023 speculated that Mia Goth could play Lilith in the Blade movie, which again, if Mia Goth is getting attached to something, also potentially a very worthwhile. This is what I would say the equivalent of like Sydney Sweeney being attached to a character, just a very hot actress, popular actress, I should say, that people tend to gravitate towards. And she is the queen of horror maybe right now, right? Like she's been doing the she did X and what was that? It's like a trilogy where she's basically playing different versions of the same character, which is a really cool idea. Anyway, if Mia Goth is also being attached to it, there's fans. There's fans outside of comic books that might enter comic books because of that. And therefore that I think makes it a viable book to get now and just leave in your collection. If you would have got it 3 years ago, you might have got it for $8.
Yep.
Same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
You were talking about Sydney Sweeney, Secret Wars 7 from the original, I think, 85, first Secret Wars series, where you got issue 8 was the first black costume. Awesome, great cover. The issue before that is the first appearance of Julia Carpenter as Spider-Woman, who was rumored that's who Sydney Sweeney was going to play in the Madam Web movie. So that book went up in value. I bought a bunch of them because I'm a huge Sydney Sweeney fan, obviously, and sold that book and made good money on that book every single time. And then the movie comes out. People aren't fans of the movie. They're in that costume for, I hear, like less than 2 minutes or something. They don't have any superpowers. Who knows what's going on with that hot mess? But that book is not going to hold its value. It's fallen back down. It'll be a cool book because it's part of that original Secret Wars that everybody loves. And a lot of people have all 12 issues. Secret Wars 8, of course, is the one that everybody wants. But, still a cool book. But it's going to come down to earth. Like you said, wait it out if you have to.
Yeah, if your idea is just to collect that run, right, which I would, again, Secret Wars would be a great, small run to put in your collection. I have it in my collection. Secret Wars 8 is the hardest one to get, but it is collectible for a reason beyond anything, beyond movies, right? Secret Wars 8 is just a key you should have in your collection. That's why everybody wants it. That's why it's a little bit more expensive than the rest. But I do think that you're not, let's say you got that book, right? You got Secret Wars, is it 7? It's 7, right?
7, yeah.
Let's say you got 7 and you got it specifically because of the movie and you're sitting there maybe a little unhappy because it's not going to go back up anytime soon but you bought it under this speculation. You now have a start at putting together the Secret Wars run, right? I mean, that together does make more, it adds more value to it because now you'll have all 12 books. It's 12, right?
And we know Secret Wars is coming. Yeah, it's 12. We know Secret Wars is coming from the MCU somehow. That's just part of the Secret Wars 5 from the Deadpool trailer that had Doom on the cover. Are we going to get God Emperor Doom? That book's the one that's really expensive, issue 5 right now. But the first appearance of God Emperor Doom, what is that, issue 2? 3 of Secret? Issue 2. That book's been a valuable book since it came out because people love Doom. They can't wait to see what happens. Who's going to be Doom? Is it going to be Henry Cavill? Is it going to be Cillian Murphy? There it is right there. 9.8. Boom. Like what's the fair market value of a 9.8 Secret Wars 2? It's got to be what, 200?
Man, this is $75, man. And I just
first God Emperor Doom? I thought Raw would have been 75.
Nah, I just sold this one. I just sold it, by the way. Yeah. So I mean,
I didn't know the price on that one.
Well, one thing I did want to say real quick on the spec that I just thought about when you mentioned this. You're a run collector, Zach.
Yeah.
I think another reason for FOMO too is when was the last like big name that shot up to hundreds of dollars recently? I'm thinking like Miles Morales was what, 2004 or 2014? No, 2004, right? And then other than that, there hasn't been a superhero like that, right? That went up that much that fast in value. Everything else is villains. Like Null was $100 book or a little bit more than $100 book. Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is like an anti-hero, $100 book. I think if you're a run collector, you have to look out for those as quickly as possible because it could turn into one of those where it's, Miles Morales or whoever.
Yep.
And then at that point, now you're missing that one because you were just, I mean, Miles Morales, his first appearance is in some small Ultimate Fallout, tie-in kind of series, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're trying to collect those or all the things that tie into that, and then you have this Miles Morales sitting there, Ultimate Fallout 4, I think it is, right in the middle of your run, it's gonna be a while before you.
Yeah, you think of like Silk, first appearance of Silk.
Mm-hmm.
That book went up quite a bit just because it's a Spider-Man character. People love Spider-Man. There was hype that they're making a TV show out of it. There's even a story that was released a couple of days ago saying that they're going to try to market it more towards men and boys, make it more sexy because I guess they're trying to go away from woke or whatever. I don't even want to talk about that. Please, I don't want to. But just the fact that with Silk, that character will also get another bump once it's announced or once we find out who that actual actress is. It's a Spider-Man character. So now's the time because you can still get that first appearance of Silk for around $100, $120 near Matt. But that book will be worth more when it actually is turned into something.
That fun story about that book. That book has been sitting, or it was sitting at my LCS. I remember when it first went on display in the little glass case at my LCS, and I believe the original price was like $350.
Wow.
Now this was a while back because I remember the price was I remember it being accurate. I remember it being kind of right on par with what the prices were going for on YouTube for a near mint possible 9. This is a raw copy, but it was a possible 9.8, and it was it seemed like it was within reason. And I remember the value of that book dropping down and seeing it for almost like, I think it was like 185, maybe something like that. And I think that it's not there anymore. So somebody bought it somewhere around that ballpark. Now, very good book, good copy of the book, but that's an example of that. By the book got really high, came back down. I mean, over $100 down. Might have even been 200 for all I remember. But the thing is it dropped significantly, and because the spec market, and you can ride that wave. If you're a collector, generally speaking, you're not in a rush because you're here to stay. You're a comic fan. Do you need it immediately right now, or do you want it? And I think you can ride that speculation wave out. And something that I wanted to comment on that you had said earlier, you brought up the Deadpool movie. This is just my personal opinion. I personally would never buy anything being speculated on in a Deadpool movie because I am almost 100% sure Ryan Reynolds is trolling everybody.
For sure.
And everything is going to be, I mean, you remember Deadpool 2, right? X Factor, X Force, right? The whole thing and the jokes and literally everybody dying. Brad Pitt died in that movie. Like it was
yes.
And it was amazing. That's what I loved because I went into it thinking, oh my God, they're going to turn it into another franchise, just like they did it. Like they're going to create all these sub characters that are going to break off, and I'm going to have to go watch one of those movies. And then they killed everybody, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun. The only thing that they didn't do in that movie, which I wonder maybe it had something to do with the rights, but I you know what? I want them to make one reference to one of the remember Ben Stiller movie Mystery Men?
Yes,
yeah, love it.
Yes,
I want to make a reference to like wrong. Wrong superhero, something like that.
Wrong universe.
Yeah, wrong universe. Anything. And I made a joke when the rumors came out about Henry Cavill signing on with Marvel at an unspecified role that is secretive right now. So I won't speculate on it. But the joke I made in a chat was, God, it would be hilarious if in Deadpool movie we saw we saw Henry Cavill as Superman, and just like, oh my God, that would be so funny. And
That would be
Deadpool's like, I
bootleg.
thought you got fired or something, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Just, I think that would be a funny
Bizarro
joke.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Bizarro. That. Well, no, he's still not like some bootleg version of Superman.
Something.
You're not going to make Henry Cavill ugly. That's not something you
Well,
can do.
I don't even know if it's possible.
But one thing you were saying, Jake, about people, I think a lot of what people get upset about with the spec and the FOMO is that a lot of people are these gatekeepers who are really worried about the community. They're worried about these people who are just coming in, buying Secret Wars 5 because they see it in the trailer, but they're not real comic fans. They're not in it for the long haul like you say they are. So they're worried that our community will somehow be degraded by these people who aren't real comic book fans. And I think that's really, hoity-toity of these people to think that they can choose who comes into the community and for what reason, because we need as many effing people as we can buying comics right now. Like all of these indies that are out there, this is not the 90s. We all know this. They are not selling hundreds and thousands of copies anymore, which is fine. It's fine. But we need as many different people in the community as possible. If that Secret Wars 5 gets somebody who's never read a comic book before to come into the community, and then we just shit on them because, oh, you're a FOMO guy, you're buying this one book just so you can flip it. No. Let's bring them in. Then we can talk to them about Doom and about Secret Wars. Like, hey, have you heard about the first Secret Wars with the Beyonder? Ooh, what if Henry Cavill plays the Beyonder? It's like we get them to be part of the community and they find a cool spot and a cool niche. I just hate these gatekeepers who try to tell people, don't buy that. You're not supposed to buy that.
Zach, were you a fan of Game of Thrones?
Oh, yeah, big time. I just rewatched it twice. I just rewatched House of Dragons. Good stuff.
So Game of Thrones, were you on early on with it? Were you an early watcher or did you come on late?
Yes, I read the books. I didn't finish all the books. I got about halfway through the third one and I was like, what the hell is going on? We're on page 19 of talking about what this person's wearing as they walk into the hall. I can't anymore, George. So I stopped reading the books. But yeah, I was definitely episode 1, day 1.
Okay, so were you, tell me this, when you saw how good the show was, were you the individual telling all of your friends, holy shit, you have to watch this show? Or were you the one hiding it, keeping it to yourself because it was your private enjoyment that you didn't want anybody to share it?
No, the latter group are dickheads. Who would do that?
Who does that, right? I'm telling you, there's almost nothing more fun about discovering something really, really good and sharing it with your friends and like being the guy who shared something with them or the first person to hear a really good song and to be like, hey, Zeus, did you hear this song yet? Did you hear it? That's a moment of joy for so many people everywhere that I still don't get the gatekeepers within comics. Because it seems like more new people coming in should be more new people to talk. Now, maybe they're upset that people aren't as knowledgeable as them. That's the whole point. You ever had a show somebody else watched? Of course you know more than they do. They didn't watch the show. That's when you can have fun telling them what to read and what they're like, oh my God, I can't wait till you get to this book, this one, right? This floppy, you got to read it, get to this. Those are the moments. People already do this with music and TV shows. Why aren't we doing it with comic books? It's the same thing. I get excited about sharing Ultra Mega with every human being who's willing to read it. And I've literally bought people this book just to share it.
I'm writing it down right now.
Oh my God. Yeah, you have to.
Zach, you haven't read Ultra Mega?
No, dude. Like I said, I had this long period. I call it my dark period during marriage number 1, where there was no comics. I need to get that.
Ultra Mega was what's it called? COVID. It was during lockdown. It was 2020.
Yeah, I missed
it.
Dude,
I'll send it to you, man. I got extras. I'll send it to you.
And there's only 5 issues right now, but I believe there's going to be an announcement for more soon. Ultra Mega coming this year, which would be so awesome.
That's Spec.
Is it Image? What is it?
It's Skybound.
No, yeah.
Well, Image Skybound.
Through Image. Yeah.
But James Herron is the creator.
Yeah, real quick on that. I mean, both of you guys hit the nail on the head, man. There shouldn't be gatekeeping. Let people collect how they want to collect. Let them pay what they want to pay. There is some rules around selling to FOMO buyers, I guess. Just try to be as fair as you can be and still make a buck so that you can continue to collect what you want to collect or buy some more books that you want to read. On that vein, Zach, did you read House of the Dragons or the book before it came out?
I did not read the book that it was based upon, but one of my best friends read the book and he shared it with me, just like Jake is telling me. He's like, dude, you got to make sure you watch House of Dragons, man, because the source material is awesome. Yeah,
dude, there's a badass thing coming up that I'm really excited about. Yeah, I'm really excited about, and that's part of it. That's how it should be, man. Like you know, the same thing with Shogun. I was telling you about Shogun, man. I'm so excited about Shogun. If you haven't read the book, read the book Shogun. You got like 7 days before it comes out, 8 days before it comes out, before episode 1 comes out, right? But Shogun is my favorite book. It's probably like 1 or 2 of my top favorite books. And we were getting a true adaptation. There was an adaptation in the 70s, which was okay. But now this one is supposed to be really good. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, and I'm not going to say, no, don't watch it. Don't read it. Wait, no, man, watch it. It's awesome.
You're telling me that they have already adapted this unreleased TV show into a book?
Yeah, exactly.
I never got it. I don't get the community where every other community, the television and the film and music communities, right? Everybody wants to be the first one there and share it. Everybody wants to be the first one there, and then they want to share it because then they are known as the informational gods, right?
You know what it is? It's because of how comics used to be perceived. And even in the early 90s, the late 80s, before things blew up, you were a dork. Yeah. You know, I didn't tell my 13-year-old girlfriend that I was reading comics. You know, she came over, would make out or whatever. She doesn't know that there's boxes and boxes in the closet because it wasn't socially acceptable.
I would like to clarify that you were also 13 at that time, right? Can we please clarify that?
I was.
Okay.
Guaranteed.
All right.
Guaranteed.
All right.
I don't think Becky's listening. But it's because for decades and decades they were the loners. They had their own small little group with the LCS, and they were the knowledge. They were the gatekeepers. They knew all of the knowledge of the vast libraries. And so when these people are coming in, they feel like it's maybe possibly losing something that they had. That they want them to be popular. They want every Marvel movie to be Endgame. That everybody loved, but I think some of them feel like they're losing something that was personal to them. Well, I do hope that they feel a part of the group. I don't think anybody wants to push them out either. I think it is just a new style of collecting, a new style of group, and we are all products of the Instagram comic book. Group. That the world of comic books on Instagram is how we all met separately, but also other friends. So I think it is a change in how comics are being spread through the world there, and some of it is, I think, very welcome, right? I do think there's a lot of those collectors that are finding it so much easier to read digitally and maybe even to start sharing their comic books. There's a lot of people on Instagram who are saying this. They're saying, I've been collecting for decades, and then they're showing their books. And that's how we met, like Paul Cook. Paul Cook is a great example of that. And I think that that's a fun way to I think that's a fun probably place for us. We probably should wrap this up. I think it's a fun place to stop here with regards to speculation. The community is growing, and I, for one, believe it's the better, maybe because I'm a part of that. I'm a part of that growth. And I think that, and this show is a part of that growth. And I do like to think we keep things very positive on this show, where we talk about new books, we talk about old books, and we talk about how to get the Grail that you want. For all you out there listening, if you made it this far, we genuinely appreciate you listening, and we would love to hear your thoughts on it by all means. Even if it's disagreeing, I'm fully prepared to have a good conversation on that. If you would please reach out to us on social media, Instagram, Twitter. We are also available on Patreon. You do not need to be a paying member of Patreon to communicate with us over there. It's a great place to communicate. And if you are interested, we do put out
additional information, we would do an entire Floppies episode on this kind of conversation. Floppies being our Patreon only exclusive show we do once a month. That's something that you can go to patreon.com and just look for Spectales. You'll easily find us there. Zach, this was a lot of fun, a lot of great conversation. I knew it would be. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you, man. I really appreciate you guys having me. I really appreciate, getting to talk about this stuff and with two guys who know their stuff, who, are reasonable. So yeah, guys, please check me out. Zach Mitchell 6 on Instagram, everybody else. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about where comics are going in the future. I think it's a positive place. We have so many good stories, so much awesome art out there, not just covers, I think comics are in a good spot right now. And I'm happy that I'm a part of the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach, for joining, man. What is it called? What you said. What you
awesome, said. Guys. Well, thanks again, Zach. And thank you again to everybody out there listening. We always appreciate you showing up and giving us your ear holes for about an hour and a half in this particular case. We will see you all again next week, where we will, I'm sure, have another amazing guest, or maybe it'll be another whale tale or something. Listeners submitted Grail tale. We're not sure yet, but we will know by next week. I promise. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week.